your guide to the truth. thenewamericanmedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody and welcome to Agree to Disagree here on the TNAM radio network here at thenewamericanmedia.com. My name is Brian Engelman. I am your host, as I have been for the past 4 years. We are ready to celebrate our 4-year anniversary, I believe on May Day. It's kind of tough to pin down exactly when we started because there's a different launch dates for like the YouTube channel, for the Twitter feed, for the homepage of thenewamericanmedia.com, etc., etc. But we're pretty much coming up on our 4-year anniversary. So thank you guys for checking us out. You can check out our sports show, The Unhappy Hour. We're going to post that shortly. It is basically talking about the NBA playoffs. We'll do a special show next week on the NFL draft. But all of that stuff is archived, and I want you to kind of take note of these places and connect with us in these various mediums that we disseminate information upon. One is called thenewamericanmedia.com. The reason you go there, that's our hub. On the right-hand side, it's the TNAM radio button. You click play and you listen live. When do we go live? Well, whenever we go live. We tweet that information out and we put that up on Facebook. So follow us on Facebook. You can do a search for The New American Media with spaces in between and like the page. Or you can do that right off our homepage right there underneath the TNAM radio button. Also, on Twitter, we're at American_media_. That's American_media_. Finally, make sure you subscribe and comment. That's where a lot of our comments and conversations continue over at youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. And if you watch those little commercials, I think we get a penny. That's a way for you to donate to us. You listen to the show, and you allow those things to keep their ads up. And then we get a couple pennies, and it all adds up, and it helps offset all of the time and money associated with running this over the past 4 years. So thank you for helping us out there. Now, Justin King. Let me tell you about Justin. Actually, let me bring Justin on first. How about we do that? We'll bring him on. Oh, I love when it does this. On the production line. There we go, contacts. There we go. It's funny how, well, anyway, yeah, just we've had to bounce around from different operating systems and different web browsers and different technology lately. It's been interesting. It's been fun, and by interesting and fun, I mean really, really annoying. But let's get Justin King onto the show, and we'll tell you all about him and the work that he's been doing. Because it's a lot.
Hello, how's it going?
Living the dream, Justin. This is Brian with Agree to Disagree, and you are live, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
You know, just fantastic. Thank you much. I appreciate you being flexible, rolling with the schedule, the ever-flowing, never concrete dynamic of internet radio, because you do what you do when you can do it, and sometimes the times are approximate. So thank you very much for joining us today. I have your information pulled up here on solutions-institute.org. This is a place where I recommend people go. You can find a weird picture of me that I'll probably change at some point, and a bio of Justin King as well. So, Justin, I'm going to kind of go over some of this, and then I'll let you continue to introduce yourself and explain what you've done that isn't quite covered in here. So, Justin is a journalism and media relations advisor with Solutions Institute. He's an investigative journalist and former security consultant who writes regularly for the Anti-Media and Digital Journal. His work can be seen on hundreds of websites. Began his activism in the late 90s, continuing now, actively supporting human rights initiatives, other activism and direct action campaigns. Area of expertise would be investigative techniques, public and media relations, personal protection, operational security, and trial preparation. Justin, I am very curious as to this personal protection, OPSEC, and some of these other things in the investigation stuff. What is your background exactly?
I used to be a military contractor.
There we go.
most of the stuff that I truly condemn and really go on the offensive about now is stuff I did in the early 2000s. There isn't a whole lot of things that will make you see exactly how screwed up the system is than being a tool of its implementation. And after 4 years of doing it, I was like, no, I'm done.
Now, when you say military contractor, my understanding is that most of those people, some call them mercenaries, some think of Blackwater, some think of there's many different offshoots. I can toss that out there with certainty, but my understanding was most of these people were former military who then worked private sector doing kind of the same thing with different rules of engagement. Is that similar to your path? Did you also serve, or did you get right into this?
I got right into this. There's a bunch of different ways you can end up in it. One is prior military service. That puts you into Blackwater, XE, Sandline, companies like that. Another way, my way, was that I had academic credentials that they wanted. When I agreed to do this, it was prior to September 11th.
Okay.
So, and I reported for duty on September 9th, 2001. 2 days later, everything changed.
Wow.
I was not, I agreed and I came on board to be an area specialist, which is somebody that researches areas and gets people prepared to go there.
Man, I cannot wait to talk to you about Jade Helm 15. My God, this is going to be great. Please continue. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud.
After September 11th, everything changed. Nobody was doing what they were originally tasked with doing. So I spent the next few years doing what people would call advanced work, which is, let's say you have somebody that needs to go in and forcibly extract, which is a really nice term for kidnap.
Kidnap, arrest, indefinitely detain, etc.
Right.
Yes.
Somebody has to go in and get on the ground and be the sneaky guy up front. That's what we did. And we did that for 4 years. And, there was an element. The other thing that people need to keep in mind is that around 2003, which is, 3 years into me doing this, things changed. September 11th to maybe March of 2003, about the time we invaded Iraq, the operations were truly and sincerely targeted against what most people in the United States would perceive as bad guys. Okay?
The other. People from other countries that use different currencies, that speak different languages that aren't us.
Yes, but more importantly, these people wanted to kill Americans. That was the difference. Around 2003, things changed, and it became more about economic warfare, that's where I started realizing maybe this isn't what I need to be doing.
And when you say economic warfare, you mean like confessions of an economic hitman kind of stuff, or just manipulating through the Federal Reserve your currency versus, how do you mean economic?
The low-level versions of that stuff. We're talking about this person is funding groups that are vocal against the United States, but they're not actually killing anybody. For a lot of us, there was a line that kind of got crossed in that time period where it switched. When most of us had no problem doing what we were doing against people that actually wanted to use force and harm civilians.
Right.
Nobody cared.
Now, where does Hamas and Hezbollah fall into that list for you? Because you hear on the right that it's like that's the line of demarcation. It's either you're east of the Mississippi or west. Are they a terrorist group or are they not? Do you lump them in there, or what groups started popping on the radar that didn't belong there?
Well, Hamas would be one that's traditionally on the U.S. list. My personal opinion of Hamas, especially now, Hamas is a political party. Now, they have militant wings that are associated with Hamas, which, the Alex Marceau Brigade, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. And there's a bunch of, most of the time they have the word brigade at the end of them. And these are militant groups. they're not, I mean, as far as true definition of terrorism, the CIA's version, or the CIA definition of terrorism, they're not terrorists anymore. They were in the 80s. Now they're an insurgent group. They're a militant group. They're, and the difference is whether or not you are directly targeting civilians to influence people that aren't present at the attack. That's the line. For me, Hamas, it's not really a terrorist group anymore. They used to be. Make no mistake about that. But today, no. They're a political party. They have a militant wing, but the militant wing is typically on the defensive, and their operations are legitimate military targets for the most part. I mean, obviously there are those that step outside that line, but for the most part, they go after military targets. Hezbollah in the 80s, early 90s, definitely a terrorist group. Now, they are the largest non-state military in the world. They've got 50,000, I don't want to use the term soldier, but because they're not very well trained, but they have 50,000 combatants that they can call on at any time. That's a pretty formidable force.
I wonder if that's similar to like a militia, like if the SHTF scenario occurs when all the local militia members rise up and join together in defense of your local communities, linked arm in arm with other people that are doing the same across our country. It's interesting to think about, especially with Jade Helm 15, where they're seeing pockets of Southern California and pockets of Texas deemed enemy territory, I believe, or enemy combatants, however it's technically phrased. No, I mean it's very interesting because when you start getting into all this geopolitical stuff, it gets really, 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 really hard to track down who's who, who's good, who's bad. You get back to the CIA and the Mujahideen and Osama bin Laden and the role that Iran and Iraq played in Afghanistan and the Russians. And it's just such a complex web that we've woven. It's really, really hard to make sense of all of it, even when you've been studying it and you know your material.
Right.
And I still want to kind of find out. I've kind of asked this question, but I've also taken it off the tracks with Hamas and Hezbollah. So that's my bad. But what were some of the groups that you saw that started popping on the target list that didn't belong there? And then I want to kind of shift this over now to the project you were just working on, trying to debunk this theory that the U.S. played a role in creating ISIS.
It wasn't really groups, it was individuals.
Oh, okay.
And these individuals were, they were all foreign nationals, which definitely, that probably would have been something that even at the time, like if at that moment, if they're like, okay, we're going to do this to a U.S. citizen, I'm willing to bet that 90% of the people that were active at that time would have said, yeah, no, we're not. They were all foreign nationals, but
what is the difference between a foreigner and a foreign national? What difference does saying national mean versus saying foreigner?
There's not. It's
okay.
A polite. It's a nicer term. It's a more sanitized term, I guess.
Sir, we're going to kidnap you versus get in the van. Okay.
Right.
More polite. Gotcha.
So, they were funding stuff, and they were, giving money to, mosques and stuff like this, that the links were, let's just say, a little bit less concrete than, I felt comfortable with.
Stuff where a jury would probably not indict if looking at the evidence.
Well, a federal jury would indict, because a federal jury will indict for anything.
A ham sandwich, right. That's the knock on them in the secret FISA courts, which is really antithetical toward our system anyway, but that's another topic in itself. It's very complicated, as I say.
Right. A state grand jury would not indict.
Well, some people these days say that Ferguson and no grand jury is going to indict a cop, but once again, that's another issue, because they all intertwine. And it gets a little convoluted. But you just saw some people that were getting picked up and being targeted, and you're going, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing how this is a national security priority. I don't really get it.
Right.
And that's where you found yourself. How long did you stay in that? And then what caused you to make the transition out?
I signed on for a 4-year period. At the end of that 4 years, I was gone.
That makes it what, 2005 or somewhere around there?
End of 2004, beginning of 2005,
Gotcha.
and then I went into the private sector of private military contracting, where you work for non-government organizations and stuff like that. And I did that. I'm actually relatively proud of. I did refugee recovery operations and stuff like that, and got good people out of bad areas.
Now, did you do that as a guy on the ground, or the guy organizing the data or implementing the system? Like, or were you a boot on the ground? Is that like kind of were?
And the answer to that question is yes to all of it.
Man, that is a badass job.
Yeah, that was fun, and we did that until the federal government kicked in our doors and arrested us. So that's what stopped that.
Explain what happened there.
The feds, they didn't really. Basically, we were doing it in countries where Uzbekistan comes to mind. The Uzbek government is allied with the U.S. government. They provided them with air bases and stuff like that to use to bomb Iraq and Afghanistan. They're also
You mean the local officials? I'm sorry. You mean the local officials were bribed off, and the local citizens were given some sort of pittance, some sort of hush money? Just we're going to do this thing, and maybe we'll build you a park or grease the palms of this local politician. Or were they really one of our allies? Did they dislike the other guys too?
I mean, well, most of our allies in the Middle East are bought, but I mean, they were allies on paper.
Okay, which fair enough. That's about as good as you can get.
They definitely don't share our views.
I could imagine.
So they're also really, really, really horrible to their own people. It wasn't long after we started operating in that country that, Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, State Department. Now, these are people that actually authorized the visas for these people. Started becoming rather hostile to what we were doing, and eventually they arrested everybody. I mean, everybody that was involved with the company. So
hold on, yourself included? You physically got arrested, or were you gone by then? I'm just trying to make it the timeline right.
Oh, no. This was in the United States. The U.S. government arrested us, not the U.S. Our government arrested us because I think, now, this isn't something I was told, but I mean, from experience, my belief was that they were worried that what we were doing, if something went wrong, what we were doing would impact international relations between the two countries.
Okay.
Because if something happened, then the U.S. government has to explain why we're allies with this country that is horrible,
Yeah, but it doesn't. I mean, Saudi Arabia, Israel. I mean, it's like everybody's up to something. Everybody we're allied with is up to something, and take some valid criticism. And it's the enemy of your enemy is your friend. But that's exactly the type of entanglements that we find ourselves in. Where, I mean, especially with ISIS, you don't know who the good guys are, if there is such a thing, or it's, well, we're going to get into that in a second, but now I'm so interested in this part of the story. So you get back what year, how long, you get arrested, you're still affiliated with the company? Walk me through, like, the bullet points of timeline to understand this.
I guess 04, 05, I was doing just general contracting.
Okay.
And at some point in that time, I began working with these companies that did this. It was 07, that date I can definitely remember, when they kicked in our doors.
Wow. No knock raid style.
No, well, it was actually funny because they, being the wonderful intelligence apparatus that they have, they didn't have my right address. So they hit an empty house. Everybody else got the no-knock raid. They weren't certain of my address the second time around, so they came up and knocked on the door very politely. But yeah, so that
wow,
happened.
Wow.
And, yeah.
So
Then I
you,
spent
you
a
saw
couple of
that
years-
military-industrial complex. You're involved in it, and then it comes and kicks your door in because you can only play around with a rabid dog long enough before it turns on you, even if you are feeding it.
Right.
Whoa, okay. Yeah, that trumps my experience with the LAPD, almost being thrown down a flight of stairs for staying at my buddy's home with a glass of water. Okay. That's crazy. So what happens? They knock on the door, you get arrested, and you got to go downtown. Like, what plays out? How does that resolve?
I get taken over to a holding cell in a federal courtroom. I'm arraigned. I'm sit in jail for a little while till they decide that I'm not going to run away, and then I go to trial. We win on most of the counts, lose on others. I spend a couple of years in a lovely federal institution in Montgomery, Alabama. Then I reemerge from Club Fed, and that brings us to today. I mean, basically, that brings us to the timeline most people are familiar with.
Wow. What'd you say, 2 years? You said a couple years? Is that 2, 3, a couple?
3, closer to 3.
And what did they get you on? What was the charge that stuck?
Alien smuggling. It's not alien smuggling.
Really?
Smuggling, harboring, and
Really?
transporting of certain types of aliens. And what that meant was that people that we got visas for that were supposed to work at the Hilton were working at embassy suites. And this had nothing to do with me, but this was something that was very easy for them to use to shut the company down.
But wasn't that a company that they were working hand in hand with, or they just had to discredit it?
Yeah, they were at one time.
So they're your friends when they need you for stuff. Then they say they know too much. We need to discredit them. So let's trump up some bogus charges, lock them all up, shutter the company, and then we're the good guys that got rid of those bad guys. But then we're just going to create another company like yours to go and do the same thing, and then we'll toss those guinea pigs in the freezing river too.
Right. Well, what's really probably the most for me was, we were pulling people out of Ukraine for a while. And
Ukraine is a place that's in the news right now.
Right. And I actually saw a job on a government website for a government, like an official government employee, to do exactly what we were doing. Exactly what we got thrown in prison.
Now, wasn't rendition was a big thing that, we're over here, well, we don't torture. It's not an American value. But we're through, what is it? Through rendition, we're paying private contractors in Egypt and Syria and Libya to torture people all we want. But then we wipe our hands off it and go, oh, well, that wasn't us. No. You just created that. You built the infrastructure. You ran it. You organized it. You funded it. But it's not you. Okay, something similar to that.
Yeah, that wasn't anything that I had any direct involvement with, but that's a pretty fair categorization of it. That's really how it works. And the fact that we weren't involved, that's not entirely accurate. U.S. employees, U.S. contractors definitely were involved.
Wow.
That's going to be coming out soon. We're about to see quite a number of photos from detainment centers that have been ordered released.
Oh boy. Abu Ghraib on steroids?
Yeah, it's going to shock the American people.
Is this a Snowden thing? You said a court rule is this a Freedom of Information Act? What's this about?
This was I'm not sure what organization got their hands on the photos, and before they could get them out, DOD came in and locked it down. And they've been fighting in court over these for like 10 years. And they finally won.
Wow.
Now, I can tell you that these photos it's going to really make people question a lot of things that they've been told. We wrote an article about the links between Abu Ghraib and the beheadings and all of this stuff over on the fifth column, and it was one of those things that people didn't want to accept it, so they pushed back against it. Well, this isn't true. Well, you're about to see the horrible photos proving that, yes, That is exactly what was going on there. And we're talking about sexual abuse. We're talking about outright torture. We're talking about stuff that we were led to believe, the American people were led to believe after Abu Ghraib, that it was a isolated incident involving just a few people. It's not accurate. It's not even remotely close to accurate. And these photos prove it. That's why it's been 10 years that they've been fighting to get these photos out. The establishment does not want these photos released. And there's going to be blowback from it because
There always is.
come out, I mean, Arabs that have no problem with the United States are going to be joining militant groups.
Well, I mean, you also have Americans that have no problem with Islam or Muslims until they see decapitation. You know, basically like snuff films on YouTube. It's
Right.
Snuff films. Like you're watching someone get killed. The decapitations, the burned alive, that's enough to make a regular American citizen make their blood boil and say these monsters are evil, and that causes blowback. And I guess that's part of this digital information / misinformation / propaganda campaign to win the hearts and minds, and really connive and convince and push your agenda through, whatever that is. It's hard to watch really horrible stuff and not get fired up about it.
Right. And it's going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable, especially those that were hugely in support of the torture program. When you see U.S. soldiers sexually assaulting a 14-year-old boy, it's really going to make you question exactly what the hell you were thinking.
I just think about that, like if I don't know, I just couldn't imagine. I don't know. If in the Jack Bauer 24 scenario, and like I needed the access code, and I need it now. It's ticking down. I have 40 minutes. I could see myself waterboarding somebody. I could see myself doing that. I couldn't see myself with a broom handle. Like that's wrong on so many other levels. Aside from just try, like I that's something I can't even fathom. Like that's sociopath. That's psychotic on a level I just couldn't. Nah, I'm good. I don't need to use this mop handle to do that to that 14-year-old boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could see myself shooting somebody if I felt my life was in danger and I needed to use self-defense to protect myself or my loved ones. Absolutely, I could envision a scenario. I don't think I could ever imagine taking a broomstick and, I'm not going to get into it, but, like, I just couldn't imagine that.
Right. Well, see, here's the thing, and this is something that the American people, I really wish that they would grasp. Intelligence officers, intelligence contractors are paid to break the law. That is what they do. They take it upon themselves in certain situations, your Jack Bauer situation, to go beyond what is legally permissible. That's their entire purpose for being. Okay.
And no, the Clinton family did not create that. It's been going on since J.P. Morgan Chase, and even way further back. Look in the Bible, you'll find stories of corruption. It's nothing new.
I mean, that's what they do. Going all the way back to the OSS, you had guys that went way beyond what was legally permissible. So to create a framework to make these horrible acts legal puts it doesn't help the Jack Bauer situation, because that was going to happen anyway. Believe me, a lot of these guys, as sociopathic, as psychotic as some of them are, they're patriots. They are true blue believers. If they thought that, if this was the only way to get, to stop a chemical attack or something like that, believe me, they'd do it. The law doesn't matter. They specifically recruit those people.
Right, and they weed out the ones that won't follow the iffy commands.
Right. So what they've done by legalizing these actions is they've moved that line further. These guys are always going to cross the line. Now you've made that line, instead of torture, you've made it a whole lot more dark as to what is permissible, because they know they're going to get away with it. Now, the interesting thing about the U.S. torture program is that it has produced nothing. There has been no intelligence that has been gained from that that was not capable of being gained, or already gained in some cases, through normal intelligence work. And that's one of those terrifying things.
Well, you see these reports come out last week that what was it, the FBI or the DE? I don't have the story pulled up in front of me. I could go back through my archive to find it. But that so much of the forensic evidence was incorrect. It was not true.
That was the FBI, yeah.
That was the FBI, okay.
FBI, yeah, for 20 years.
For 20 years, you're lying to the juries to get your conviction, whether the person's guilty or not. And they're saying, well, I don't think it was him based on the information, but they're saying they found his hair there, and they have a guy, and look, it's the FBI. They know what they're doing. It had to be that guy. So, yeah, it's that guy. You got to convict that guy. Otherwise...
14 people are dead. Because of it.
One person's dead in Homan Square that we know of. Those are secret detention sites in Chicago, in our own country. I talked with your buddy Alex Freeman. He was on the program not too long ago. We were talking about Homan Square. And, these things are existing on U.S. soil. Did you follow the Homan Square story?
Oh, yeah, that was the heroin bit. That was my investigation.
There you go. Tell us about what you uncovered there.
Basically, after we started pushing and saying, hey, we want to talk to people that have been there, okay, we got flooded. And I went through them one by one and talked to all of these people. Some of them were not credible. Some of them, were alleged similar things to what people were saying, but the severity of their crime of which they were accused, or the nature of the crime of which they were accused, made them to where we couldn't use them as a source. Because, the reality is, if the person is accused of sexual abuse against a minor, nobody's going to care what happened to them. Okay, so we had to weed out a lot of people, but that doesn't make all that stuff incorrect. It's just you can't put that person up there under cross-examination to say, "Oh, look at the awful stuff they did." They're probably lying about that. No, I support the police. My uncle's a police officer. No, that guy's a scumbag. He probably deserved it. Exactly.
Right.
And then we found one guy who was picked up because they got the wrong guy. He was in his mid-20s, shared the name with somebody that was in their mid-60s, and they picked up the wrong guy. This guy, he wanted to tell me about, getting smacked around, being, roughed up. Not horribly, mistreated. But
stuff that won't kill you or leave really bad marks. Right.
But during the process of this, as an offhand comment, and this is what made it so believable, he was like, yeah, and, and the one cop threatened that he was going to shoot me up with heroin so that, they had a reason to hold me and blah, 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 blah. And it just kind of, I was like, what? And I had him say it 2 or 3 times because the only death that ever occurred in that place was a heroin overdose from somebody that everybody says this guy never did heroin. Nobody said that this guy that died was a nice guy. They're just like, he's not a junkie, And,
yeah, he's a scumbag, but he never touched that junk.
Exactly. And so when
you just connected a dot right there. I don't know that I really grasped that's how that all connected. Okay.
And once we got that out, that's when things really started to unravel. Now this guy has been contacted by civil rights lawyers, and I can't give away any information more about him than what's in the article.
Tell us where the article is and pimp all your sites, if you would, real quick.
The Fifth Column, the fifthcolumnnews.com, the Fifth Column News on Facebook. That's our new site. There's a whole bunch of journalists that that people have read for years that are working together on this.
Name drop a few of them for the newbies.
Kerry Wedler, Alex Freeman, Ben Morris, myself, Bobby Rodrigo. They're just a lot of people. Cassius Methel from Anti-Media is also set up. I don't know that he's written anything yet, but he's set up too. So that is the new project, and that project is basically to help people make the switch from mainstream sources to alternative sources by providing a little more context. Because one of the things I noticed when I wrote at the Anti-Media was anti-media readers are informed. I don't have to provide context. You know, I
Right.
could just say this is what happened, boom, and they get it. What that does is that turns away people that don't have that information already. So we want to be that stepping stone to get people from the USA Today to the anti-media.
Right, from MSNBC and Fox over to your site.
Right. And that's the goal. It's going very well. Our readership is it's growing every day, and it's exceeding our expectations, at least my expectations.
Yeah, I said in the open, I think I said it before I brought you in, that our goal at the New American Media is to become the world's largest media company in 10 years, and we just sell it. This next week will be our 4-year anniversary. I think we're just about wrapping up our beta test, which is kind of funny. But you mentioned something very important, and I think you're onto something. Is that context? And we do a sports show called The Unhappy Hour. Just talk about the Indians, Cavs, and Browns and Buckeyes, and some random sports news as well. But my hope is that if I can talk about libertarian politics to a Schittsburg Steeler fan, and we can laugh about how lousy their team is, and then he can come back about how that we've never even been in a Super Bowl in the modern era, and we go back and forth about cities, but like we understand the ideology of how our country is falling apart at the seams, and if we don't get it on track and get it on track fast, we're headed toward a civil war, revolutionary war that's just going to make the previous ones look like warm-ups. And vice versa. It's neat bringing in a sports fan, and then I get them to consider politics where they hadn't really paid much attention to it in the first place. I mean, hell, I had Laura Eisenhower on the program a couple of weeks ago, and she's talking, great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower and how she was recruited into these off-planet programs, and you go down the rabbit hole, and this stuff goes really deep. How much context do you need to kind of start thinking about off-site colonies and the black space programs and how NASA was really founded? You go down the rabbit hole, and it's like, dude, I just came here to talk about LeBron James. But I have it's all just out there. Find it if you will. Some people need context, some people don't. I guess for me, I'm just past the point of caring. I just don't care anymore. I'm just letting it rip on all of the fronts that I'm interested in, and I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may. But I think Solutions Institute has been a really interesting tool to get a lot of people connected, and that's essentially how I found you, Justin. I'm kind of working my way through a lot of the advisors on Solutions Institute. But before we transition, because seriously, we got to get into who created ISIS, this secret government program that you've uncovered, and what you think Jade Helm 15 is really about. Talk about Solutions Institute so far. How did you get to know the people in this group? What has your experience been so far? And maybe if you have any advice for the people that haven't checked it out before.
Solutions Institute is basically a think tank for activists. And what they've done is they've pulled people who have, you have somebody like me, that has, went to federal prison, that has direct action experience, that is rather militant by most standards, in the same institute with a serving police officer. And that gives people that need help, that need to know what they need to do to get an issue resolved, it gives them resources that are just amazing. It was put together by Dan Johnson, who's the guy behind PANDA, the People Against the NDAA. That's how I wound up in it. Was through Dan.
And what is your concern about people against or about the National Defense Authorization Act for people that, I don't know, may need a little context?
Basically, it's exactly what I was talking about earlier. And it's providing this legal framework for people that don't need it. In all of the situations in which the NDAA should apply, these extreme Jack Bauer situations, it would have happened anyway. They would have later on, yes, they would issue an apology. No, we shouldn't have done that. But it would have happened anyway. But now what they've done is they've allowed for indefinite detention of American citizens. Basically, they were just like, the Fourth Amendment, nobody cares. Due process, right to not incriminate yourself, all of this stuff, it's all gone. Okay, if we think you're a bad guy, we're going to hold you. That's not acceptable to me. So that's where I came into the fold. That's how I came in contact with Dan. Because I think, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Dan is probably one of the most impressive people I've met, simply because I'm old. From my standards, Dan is a baby.
He's literally the next batch that, when people like John B. Wells pass off a torch and I lean over the railing and I grab it, it's like you try to pass it along to, and I don't mean the duration of years of service. I just mean, age bracket, and it's like then you reach over, you make sure Dan's candle is lit, and it's like, all right, dude just turned 21. I'm not quite. I'm significantly older than Dan Johnson, and we need to make sure Dan can hand it off to the people that are 11 right now and they have no idea what's going on, and as they start waking up, I think it's all of our responsibilities to help each other, and that.
I mean, he is a very, very, very impressive young man. I mean, I wish I was half as aware at his age as he is. I mean, it's amazing. He's definitely somebody that everybody should keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually did a radio show with him, I think 2 days ago, or was it yesterday? Lions of Liberty, libertarians in living rooms drinking liquor. And I think he was one of the 6 or 8 guests. It's always a fun show. No, but then now that you've been, I don't know, not recruited into, but since you've teamed up with some of the Solutions Institute crew as an advisor, like what has your experience working with this new group been so far?
They've put me in contact with people where they had my favorite one, because I got to be sneaky again. There was a community that was basically trying to implement some Agenda 21 type ordinances. And the local paper was behind it because of local corruption, and the people that were against it couldn't get any airplay. They couldn't get their message out. So Dan put the guy in contact with me, and I was like, okay, well, if you can't, get anything against it out, get something that's for it. Just explain exactly what it is. You don't have the right to your own property. You don't have this. And if you don't like it, you're not an American.
Oh, to go above and beyond to like troll the group.
Yes, and
that's brilliant. I love it.
That's what we did.
I love it.
Very, very inflammatory article in support of this guy and in support of this policy. And the newspaper that wouldn't touch it, of course, they ran that because they're like, oh, it's for it, because the first 3 paragraphs are for it, and that's all the editor read. So they ran it, and of course, the local population was like, what do you mean I don't have right to my own property? And that ordinance is gone now. I mean, it hasn't been completely shelved, but it's already defeated. They had more people show up to talk against it than they had vote.
That is awesome. I love that. I need to get in on some of these brainstorming sessions. This is right up my alley. This is good stuff. It really is. I had Issa Hodge, another advisor. He was on, and he was talking about, the best way to manipulate the mainstream media. It's like there's certain things that they need and what they're looking for. And if you give them the basics, you can steer it in any direction you want, or you can throw surprises in there at any moment, as long as you do it the right way. And you know what? Media is a two-way street. It's where they've had it wrong for so long, Justin. I think the dinosaur media, they've had such a monopoly. It was almost like the record companies when Napster came out. The first instinct, with Lars Ulrich and Metallica and some of these other artists and the record companies was shut it down. Shut it down. They're stealing. That's ours. We own those artists. You could see them smoking cigars and really with grumpy looks on their faces, having some whiskey and a couple ice cubes in their high-rise office building, to shut down this, this just horrible new technology versus embracing it and finding something of value in just rethinking your game plan. That's all you got to do is rethink your game plan. But I think the dinosaur media, they've had a stranglehold on us for so long. They think it's a one-way street. They tell us they're crap, we accept their crap, or else we're un-American, and they run the narrative along with the politicians. Man, has the internet changed all of that. They have no control over us anymore.
Right. I mean, it's funny because every once in a while we'll be able to poke hard enough at one of the mainstream outlets or a incumbent senator that has been there for so long he doesn't feel like he's accountable to anybody.
Harry Reid.
Yeah, that we actually get hate mail from people, at Fox 8 in particular. Fox is not my friend. They don't really like me very much. Or comments from politicians. I had a Colorado representative tell me that if I didn't pull a story that I would never get an interview with his office again. And I was like, I'm not the mainstream media. I don't really care what your side is. I don't need access to your office.
I'm writing the article either way. I was just giving you a chance to defend yourself, pal. Whatever. We don't need you here.
This is your chance. If you don't want to use it, I really don't care.
So great. I love it. It's just I don't know. It's sand crumbling through the fingertips, and the more you try to hold it, the more it's just sifting through every nook and cranny, and you can't catch it all. And it's going. It's sands of an hourglass. I really think we're headed for some great times on this planet. Unfortunately, I do think that there are going to be enormous bumps and bruises along the way because these people that have been so spoiled for so long, they don't like competition. And in fact, positions of power attract people that are sociopathic, psychopathic, that are extreme into controlling other people's lives. Like you said, Agenda 21. And actually, now you got me thinking about Harry Reid, though, really quick. You think he really fell on his exercise equipment?
I don't know. I mean, that's one of those guys that I've honestly just when I see his name show up in a headline, I just immediately skip it because I know I'm in for some stuff that's going to make my blood boil. So I just tend to just ignore him. I'm like, we'll get to him when it's time.
Yeah, we went out to we just had the 1 year anniversary of the Bundy Ranch situation. We went out there and covered it, and there were lots of rumors that Harry Reid and his son Rory were behind some deal with China and some solar panel plant and trying to use eminent domain and trying to creep in and seize public land for private use. And it's just interesting, a year later as we were doing the story, it's like Harry Reid announcing he's not running again after someone made him an offer he probably couldn't refuse. I don't know if the mafia bosses had everything to do with that or nothing to do with that, but I digress. It's just interesting to see some of these guys that are starting to move along the wayside now. I didn't expect Harry Reid to ever leave, and the black eye, he kind of reconsidered, and you go, okay, all right. So the black eye that our country might have, Justin. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this might be tricky, it might be a bunch of bumps and bruises in the road before we can get it figured out. Like I said, I think with the internet age, we are going to win as long as we have this internet. Jade Helm 15. The concept, kind of like we were talking with Homan Square and kind of the operations that you were involved with, and along with the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. People are really concerned about this Jade Helm operation that's set to take place. I don't have the dates in front. I think it's, July through September. What have you been following on this, and what do you make of all of it?
Okay. As soon as I saw the first slide, the infamous map that labels Texas as hostile and Utah is hostile and a little sliver in South Carolina, I knew exactly what it was. This is, people may not want to hear this, but this is a training exercise. This is a massive, massive SEER exercise. A SEER exercise, survival, escape, resistance, or survival, evasion, resistance, and escape.
Hold on. That was cool that you said it the first time. Cool you said it a second time. Slow it down. Let me really understand. Survival? What was that?
Survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. Okay? Basically, what this exercise exercise is they're going to take SEAL teams. In fact, all of the little acronyms that nobody understood, those are Navy Special Warfare Training Unit, Operational Detachment Alpha, those are Green Berets. These are all special operations units. Basically what's going to happen is they go and they're going on this mission. Now, this mission is fake, but they're going on this mission, and then as part of the scenario, something goes wrong. Their helicopters can't pick them up, or they get shot down, or whatever.
Like the story we were told of the Bin Laden raid.
Right. Okay. The only difference is there's no backup. These guys have to escape and evade from Texas to a friendly country, which you see on those maps. Okay, that's what this exercise is. When the rest of the slides came out, which most of the outlets that are pushing this theory, they didn't really address those, because it's very clear from the rest of those slides, which are available on the fifth column, that's exactly what this is. These exercises have been going on for 30 years. Now, granted, I will tell you this. This is the biggest one I've ever seen. But if you take that map and you just tilt the map a little bit, what you'll see is that Texas is Iran, Utah is Syria, and that little sliver inside of another country, that's Palestine. That's what you're looking at. All of the other countries, you have Turkey represented, you have Iraq, which is friendly leaning hostile or undetermined leaning hostile. That's what this is. Okay? People are really worried about it, and what bothers me, and the reason I wrote the article explaining what it is because it's drawing attention away from things that matter, like the Trans-Pacific Pact or Trans-Pacific Partnership, stuff like that. Jade Helm is not something you need to worry about. The connections between the Walmart thing, that's really a stretch. That actually looks like those are more connected to Walmart employees demanding more money and trying to organize unions.
You're saying Walmart is more about unions and less of trying to do some sort of staging operations and gear transfer with loading docks of stuff marked Walmart going across the country with people and supplies, or maybe some even underground tunnels if you would want to go that far. You're saying it's more about a union contract. Right.
Now, as far as, if you look at the locations, and one of the big things is, these are all near military bases. One of them is near McBeal, which is in Tampa. Yeah, that's true. It is near a military base. It's also near McGill Air Force Base, which is the home of SOCOM, the Special Operations Command. If there is ever a location that does not need outside assistance to do something sneaky, it's McGill Air Force Base. I mean,
but what if they wanted more toys? What if they wanted more toys and staging grounds, maybe? Because they already do it so well, but let's get a few more staging grounds.
I really don't see it as necessary.
All right, that's interesting, because it's something some of us know nothing about. Some of us, while we might not say, hey, it's going to happen, man, they're going to turn off the internet and there are going to be knocks on the door and you're GPS coded, you're getting taken if you're a dissenter, and you're just going to wake up in a detention center or a FEMA camp. There are people that don't think that's happening in July, but are saying, look what they're preparing for. Like, they're turning their stuff inward, kind of like I was saying with connecting Jade Helm to Homan Square. That stuff that used to even take place in a different place, now they're practicing and they're building these sites in on ourselves to come after us. So, I mean, there are people just saying, this is a good chance to raise awareness of the entire issue without necessarily saying, oh, dude, totally, it's happening. Get ready. The apocalypse is here. July. 4th of July will rise again. Not going that far. But people that are just saying, connect the dots here and trying to wake up the people that need the context, maybe.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. I do not, if I thought this was a completely ludicrous and insane conspiracy theory, I would not have wasted my time researching it. Okay.
What concerned you so much about it? Because I think you had said something along those lines that, conspiracy theories normally aren't your thing. You don't really give a lot of credence. Like, it's usually more the simplest answer is the one. Was that Occam's razor? But You're saying this one, you wanted to get some extra research in. Why? Why did it seem real enough where you were concerned enough to maybe give this more consideration than maybe you normally would have?
Mainly because I think that I could look at the map and I could tell people what it was. That was one thing, was that I could actually decipher all of those acronyms. And in the article, we were able to source them all and find them in other military documents to prove that, yes, in fact, I'm not a lunatic. But the thing that worried me about it was that I'd seen these types of exercises conducted before, and my worry was these guys out there training, and they're sneaking across Texas, and some very well-meaning person, or group takes a shot at them, and then they shoot back. That was my concern.
That should still be our concern. I had John Correa. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but you should check him out. He runs a site called Active Self-Protection. Cover your asp, he says. But he plays these videos, and then he walks you, like he just shows like these, like gas station homicides, or someone attacks someone with a knife at a bus station, and then you're getting all these surveillance, all the surveillance footage, and you're just he's walking you through a scenario, going, look at this person. His head's down. He's totally lost in his own world and his cell phone. And look, these three guys were able to sneak up right behind him because of it. Now watch what happens. And he kind of walks you through all of this stuff. But with Jade Helm, this stuff is something that we could have happen to us as the good guys, and we could perceive it incorrectly, because in that show that I did with him last week, I caught wind of something. There was this killer clown prank that went wrong. It looked like it was in New York City, and these idiots are running around. Maybe it was around Halloween, in costumes, and looks like blood all over them. And they're swinging axes, and they have people that are like fake victims, and they're terrorizing the public. They're terrorizing the kids and the people around them. And three of these idiots come up on this one dude who pulls out a handgun and aims at all three of them, and they take off their masks. Like, no, it's a prank, it's a prank, it's a prank. Don't shoot. I was like, holy crap! I've never really considered what a concealed carry permit holder has to think of. What if you're in a situation that seems so obvious, I gotta shoot, but you run into some ass clown that's literally an ass clown? That could just be pulling a stupid prank for clicks on YouTube views, whereas you could have avoided the whole situation, or taken a step back and recognized that there's a slight possibility these things could happen. You're saying the same thing with Jade Helm. There is a possibility these guys could be running a normal op that has nothing to do with them, and somebody with well-meaning intentions and concern over what they're seeing, because you're not really supposed to be mixing military with local police like posse comitatus, and they keep doing, you could see a good guy take an aim at a bad guy, but the bad guy's actually one of the good guys, and the good guy kills the other good guy, and you got a whole thing on your hands.
Right.
Okay.
And I can see that happening. Now, what's very interesting about this is that SOCOM has actually released a statement that hasn't gotten much airplay, and it's not enough for me to write an entire article about, but everybody spread this around. These guys are not going to have live ammo. I think that SOCOM realized that they had stepped in some dog poop. So the people conducting the training will not have live ammo. Okay? So that's their way of trying to mitigate that, but at the same time, that doesn't stop somebody that sees five guys cutting across their property in the middle of the night or coming up near their house, because here's the thing, these guys, they don't have food. They are going, and that's the other thing, is these guys are going to commit minor crimes. They are going to steal food. They are going to, hide away on a 18-wheeler or something like that. These are normal things that happen.
Break into cars on the street.
It's possible. In fact, one of the stories that I think it's funny because, nobody did get hurt, but during the one that ran from Oklahoma to Kentucky, a guy just flat out stole a car and just drove home, which probably not the best thing. The Army had to go back and pay for all of this stuff. And, and again, that's a situation that in Texas, yeah, you can get killed doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, tell that to the family of Tamir Rice. He was a kid at a park. Yes, I was watching the video. Yes, he was acting weird. Yes, he was kind of acting creepy. Sorry to speak so ill about, the city I'm from and the situation, because it is tragic. But, I mean, yes, he was acting weird and someone called it in, but even the call said, I think it's probably a toy, but you know, you never know. Can you just go check? You know, this cop flies up and in just a matter of seconds, just unleash and starts, you know, kills the kid right there, just shoots into him, kills him dead. You know, that officer has a right to think if he sees something that looks like a gun, it could be a gun and everybody's lives are in danger. That's what they're paid to do. But it's another one of those clown in the park scenarios. You know, somebody wrong place, wrong time, or pushing the limits in the wrong way, like the U.S. government pushing these limits. You know, the clowns pushing the limits of scaring the general public, and then the Tamir Rice thing just being unfortunate. It's when you start playing these games, these are the consequences sometimes. Is it worth the risk? Do we really need to do it this way?
Right. And one of the things that I want to get across to people as far as those that are worried about martial law, okay, those that are worried about the U.S. military being used against American citizens. There are certain indications that could come, and we're not seeing any of them. This is what you need to just keep in mind. Iraq had a population of 33 million. Okay, it took 160,000 combat troops to take a decade and still not pacify it. The number of troops necessary to pacify the United States would be over 1.5 million. We don't have anywhere near that number.
How many are flooding across? How many are flooding across the southern border undocumented? How many other countries are we destabilizing to the point where when someone's desperate and you give them food and protect their family, they'll do anything you ask them to do? 1.5 million is a ridiculous number. It's very difficult to imagine a scenario where that could happen, considering that the American people took down the British, which was the world's #1 superpower in murder back in the day. I mean, just some farmers with pitchforks took down the king. I get it, and I don't think that we're going to be a pushover. I do think we're so dependent on the energy grid. If you snap off the power, this whole country descends 200 years ago. Nobody even knows basic hygiene, let alone medicine or means to take care of themselves. Purifying water. People are going to be so unprepared that they would gladly hop on those FEMA trucks and you know, on their Agenda 21 high-speed rail to a processing FEMA center, and then maybe join a local force, and then they're told in, you know, some sort of blue hat UN coordination that there's a bunch of bad people causing problems. Go get them, except those are the good guys. I mean, I could see scenarios, thinking this through, a few steps, a few extra dominoes, playing a game of Risk here. It's possible to take this country over if you have a long enough game plan, and I think these creeps have been planning this for a while, which is why I'm just a little bit more revved up on it. What would you say to somebody like me? How much am I taking out of context and worrying unnecessarily about versus you're actually pretty right on a lot of these, but here's why it's not quite there yet? Okay.
Here's your main crux is that the bringing in foreign troops, which is a theory that we hear a lot, is there's nothing that's going to make some farmer in Wichita that has never used his rifle for anything other than deer hunting turn it on a person. And these guys know that. They know that bringing in foreign troops would definitely anger the American population. More importantly, the indications that we have show that we're not leaning towards martial law. We're not leaning towards the military being used against the people. We're leaning towards police state. And that's where I believe our focus needs to be. You know, if the same theory came out and said they're going to put a DHS officer on each corner, believe me, I would spend some time looking into it. That is a whole lot more probable. The use of federal law enforcement, because the American people have been so, I don't want to say brainwashed, indoctrinated.
Why don't you want to say brainwashed, Eric? Why don't you want to say brainwashed? Eric Holder said it when talking about the Second Amendment.
Okay, well, we've been so brainwashed, indoctrinated, whatever term you want to use, to believe that anybody with a badge is a good guy. That's going to be accepted a whole lot faster than a guy in a military uniform. That's where I think the real threat is. That's the reason I always try to downplay and try to show people that the military is not necessarily going to be the people behind this. I think that you're going to have a federal law enforcement that when this comes, and I'm saying when, not if, because we're on a trajectory now where this is almost guaranteed. Now, whether it's 5 years from now or 20 years from now, we don't know.
If I give you $100 that you don't have to pay me back, it's a roulette wheel. You have 1 through 55. I don't know. What is it, 1 through 32? How many numbers are on a roulette wheel? I'm talking to a producer that doesn't exist. I'm just throwing it out in the ether, waiting for like Robin Quivers to get back to me. It didn't happen. Or what's the guy on Rush? What the hell's his name? Anyway, if I gave you money that you could bet in the next 50 years, and you don't have to pay me back, but if it hits, you get 35 times your money and you can keep it all. What number do you think this police state, that the turnkey to tyranny happens?
I think it's a slow descent, but I think where we pass the point, or where we end up with an insurrection, assuming that law enforcement doesn't keep killing innocent civilians, because that could definitely trigger this at any moment.
It's already on the precipice here. So you're saying because of that reason, a big protest in Boston could lead to a big protest in St. Louis, which could lead to a big protest in Cleveland, and then things could just spiral out of control where it's open season real fast.
Right. If any one of these large protests against police brutality, the cops open fire and give us a Boston massacre type scenario, all hell's going to break loose. So
we almost had that in Ferguson with those MRAPs on the street. Let's remember, we were very close to that.
Oh yeah, no, I was there. Yes, we were. Like I was, and I'm watching these guys that have more equipment than training do some things. But I can tell you this, and this is the reason I would give the number that I give. And I would say 15 to 20 years before they plan for it to happen. Now, it might happen before then because of events out of their control, but 15 to 20 years simply because for the last decade, we've had American soldiers that went overseas and ran counterinsurgency operations. In order to counterinsurgency, you have to know how to be an insurgent. They're going to want these guys old. They're because when we were there in Ferguson, there were people that knew what they were doing, that had that progressed much further at all. You would have seen those MRAPs turned into bunkers and then turned into ovens. You would have seen those riot lines rolled because these guys do not know what they're doing. American law enforcement's never faced a threat that is actually organized. And there are enough people, there are enough vets from Iraq and Afghanistan that are, let's just say, disaffected with the government that can easily train the American civilian how to be an insurgent. So if I'm the government and I'm trying to implement this plan, I'm going to want that threat aged. I'm going to want them old. I'm going to want them not fit to fight. Now, again, like when we were in Ferguson, that was an instance where I watched law enforcement behave in a manner that had the right people been in that crowd, you would have seen a firefight. I mean, it was something that could have happened at any moment.
It was that provocative where the people said, this is not a game, this is not a joke, do the thing that you have to do right now.
Right. Now, and that's the thing is, and I don't like bringing in race to something unless it's actually part of the issue. In this case, I believe it is.
In this case, it absolutely was.
Yeah, had this been a scenario in which it was a majority of white people that were affected, and this was a crowd of white people, you would have had a lot more vets. You would have had a lot more guns. And
wow.
I think that had that same scenario played out at Bundy Ranch, it would have started. I mean, that's how close we are. I can think of instances where something could have sparked it.
Those two were probably right at the top. That was literally guns drawn. The picture we used, you remember that picture from Bundy Ranch, the militia member that was on the overpass with his rifle?
Yeah.
I mean, I went out there, and I went out. My buddy was getting married, and this story broke, and I saw that Pete Santilli video, and I went, "This is not right. This is not good." I saw it, and then it was like, my brother said, "You got to go out there for this." I go, "You're telling me it's that big?" Because my brother, he's I don't know what title you would give him at the New American Media, but he's I don't know. He's one of the other people involved, and he said, "You need to go out there for this." And I do radio shows with this other guy, Blake Wally, out there, and he lives in Vegas. And a day or two went by, and I said, "No, this is big. Let's go out there." And so it was like an hour and a half drive or something like that from Vegas to get up there. And I remember getting there, and they're pointing over at the mountains, saying, "Yep, they had snipers there. They had snipers there." And this is where the helicopters were coming through. Now, the helicopters went that way, and that's where they were shooting down into the heads of the cattle. They were just picking them off outside of the helicopter for fun, terrorizing us. Over there's where they built all these land improvements so that they could, drill a well and actually get water and make these little mini oasis areas in the desert so that their cattle and the rest of the flora and fauna could thrive from it. And they just walked me through this scenario, and I'm telling you, man, it was tense. I wasn't out at Ferguson, and I could see that was intense. But if you all know how Bundy Ranch played out, this was a lot of cowboys on horses with their guns and a mob of people behind them. Nobody fired a shot, mind you. But it was tense beyond belief, and the people demanded that they back up and get off of their land, get off of wherever they are. You're going home, and you're going home now, and we're taking our cows with us. It was unreal. It was like a literal Western movie. It was like something out of Young Guns, you might see, but modern day. And you just look at this militia man on the overpass with his, the barrel of his, he's laying on the ground, and there's people, in fanny packs and Reebok shoes from who knows where they drove in from. And I mean, it's ready to pop off. A war is ready to pop off. This is your Crispus Attucks moment. Who's that one person that's going to get killed that's going to set this whole thing on fire? And I mean, thank God that didn't happen at Bundy Ranch, and thank God it didn't happen in Ferguson. But you and I know as well as anybody else, we are that damn close to one idiot in the crowd pulling a trigger, let alone somebody inside the government that is a COINTELPRO that wants to set it off. And they'll blame the protesters who never did anything for it. We are that damn close to it turning into a police state, at least locally in that area for a significant amount of time. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, I would completely agree with that statement. That's the thing, is that these guys know what they're doing. As far as are the people that came back from Iraq and Afghanistan awake, these guys, they know what they're doing. I sat in on one of the conference calls where the various militias were organizing for Bundy Ranch, and I'm listening to these guys. And one of the things that I loved was they talked about, okay, nobody's showing up outfitted. Everything's in the trunks, and we're using the same cars to bring people in and out. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but what you realize is this is what the Iraqis did to us. We kept track of the cars. We didn't keep track of the individuals. So that prevented DHS and the Bureau of Land Management from knowing exactly how many people they were facing, because they bring in 4 guys, and then one guy would leave and bring in another 3. And, I mean, if we're at the point where the militias, which in the 90s were not that great. They would not have been able to mount this. Now, these guys are impressive. They really are. The stuff that they're able to pull off is beyond the capabilities of law enforcement being able to defeat them.
So then that's why you're saying that's why then perhaps the Department of Homeland Security issued their potential terrorist list, and they put people down that have served in the military. They might quote or reference the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. People that mention Ron Paul or the Federal Reserve. They're basically saying the awake, alert, trained patriotic people that will defend this country against them because they are corrupt. That's who the Department of Homeland Security needs to look at to protect themselves, is how this is playing out, right?
Right. The guy that went over there and was a force multiplier with the Green Berets definitely is a threat to the establishment if he wakes up. If he wakes up and realizes that what his buddies actually died for, believe me, that guy is dangerous. I mean, that and that is the biggest threat DHS faces, and that's honestly the biggest threat the U.S. government faces at this point. It's not a foreign threat. It's a local threat in response to their activity.
So then there's a lot of people that saw events like Ferguson. Let's keep Bundy Ranch out of it for a second. Let's bring race back into it, because in Ferguson, this was a white kid who was on his way home from Sunday school, and he had his hands up, and he was pleading with the officer, and 45 people had cell phone footage of this, and everybody watched this kid plead for his life, and he was blown away by an Uzi, some sort of semi-automatic and a cannon, right in broad daylight, and then the situation popped off. Now, that's the opposite of what happened. There was a long investigation that went into this. The claims that it was hands up, don't shoot, that never happened. I mean, they went through this with a fine-tooth comb, and unfortunately, there was not a body camera on the officer, and I think that's the one takeaway almost every group can agree with, is wouldn't it be great if there was a third-party, neutral, objective viewer to this situation, because, man, I hope we get this right. That was, in many areas of this country, perceived to be another attempt, just like we saw from the Obama administration with Trayvon Martin, to turn it into a black versus white, a black versus police or authority, which Zimmerman was a white Hispanic, which had never been invented until MSNBC did anyway. So let's just focus on Ferguson here. That this was another attempt for Sharpton and Jackson and Obama and Eric Holder to stir up some sort of race war, to turn us on ourselves. A lot of us feel like that's what they did both times around. What role do you think that plays in this with President Obama for another year and a half, provided he doesn't try to become some sort of dictator for life?
That concept goes back to Lyndon Johnson, actually before Lyndon Johnson, because he was complaining about it when he said, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was something along the lines of, if you can teach the poorest white man that he's better than the richest black man, he'll empty your pockets for you and do whatever you want. I mean, for anybody to believe that the elected politicians do not use race as a weapon to keep people divided, they need to have their head examined. I mean, this has gone on for 50, 60 years. And yes, I completely believe that the instances where this happens, it gets played up because that black-white fight keeps elements of the government in power. So it's something we're definitely going to see more of, and it creates a backlash, and then it goes back and forth.
How do we get these people to understand? Now I'm calling them these people, Justin. That's awesome. How do we get black people? Let's be honest here. How do we get black people to understand that they're being played this way and that the real power is something different than the immediate thing in front of them? It's not a race problem with the cops. It's a cop problem inside the cops. It's the military-industrial complex creeping in, the blending of military with police, and like you said, narrow it down, the police state, where the lampposts are actually recording conversations and listening, and your cell phones are tracking you, and those can be activated, the little cameras, the little microphones can be activated at any time. They know who's on your contact list, and it's just every piece of you is being tracked and followed wherever you go. How can we convince people that see everything through a prism of race, where it's whitey is up to no good again, when it's like you and me are like, come on, I'll speak for myself. That's the furthest thing from my mind, because I see it happening to humans, not just Black Lives Matter. It's all of our lives matter. because it's coming after all of us. It's not just a monster focused on you. It's coming after us, and we're your friends in this. You know what? Am I just rambling because I'm talking race, or am I making sense?
No. I think you have a valid point. But what I think is, I think that we actually went a long way when Ferguson happened to solving that. And it wasn't actually getting black people to realize anything other than, holy crap, white people showed up to help.
Ah, by their deeds they shall be known.
Right. And I think that with...
Okay, I like that.
You had a lot of white organizations that actually were like, whoa, what happened? And they showed up.
See, because I don't... Go ahead.
Anonymous had a very, very strong presence there. And Anonymous, it's not a white organization, but it's predominantly white in the United States. You know, I mean, most of the people involved are white. That's not, you know, there's enough. That's a statement of fact. But they showed up in numbers to help. That went so much further than any possible sort of dialogue or, you know, trying to explain it away. And then the same thing happened with John Crawford. When John Crawford, which is the guy who got shot in the Walmart.
I've been in that Walmart. I'm from Ohio, and I've been in that Walmart. Yeah.
When that happened, the protest there, it started with Ohio Students Union or Ohio Students Association, something like that, which is a predominantly black organization. Okay? However, the local militias and the local anonymous crews and the local 3%ers, these guys, most of whom went to Ferguson, I think they realized that how far that token of just showing up helped. So here, you know, it started with Ohio Students Association, but very quickly it became a militia cause. It became an anonymous cause. It became, you know, and when you showed up to one of the rallies, it was almost a perfect example of, it's not white versus black. It's not cop versus black. It's cop versus citizen.
Them versus us.
Yeah, that carried so much more weight than any form of explanation that we can do with white guys.
Well, just like whites need to kind of be happy that Harry Reid is retiring. I mean, we really gotta get Al Sharpton to kind of, you know, take up golf or something. You know, like there are some people that are past their I don't know, past their heyday, if you will, and they're doing a lot more harm than they are good. You know, and I just think it's important to recognize that as, you know, you sift through these cases, whether it's Eric Garner, Kelly Thomas, you know, and if these names don't ring a bell, Eric Garner, New York, choked out and killed. Kelly Thomas, killed on camera by the Fullerton, California police. And the officers were acquitted of charges somehow as he was beaten to death on camera. You can hear him calling out for his father. It's incredible. It's horrible.
The video's 30 minutes long. It took them 30 minutes to beat this kid to death.
And the guy puts on gloves. This is the topic, Justin, where I made my only full-on appearance on Coast to Coast AM back when John B. was the another Solutions Institute advisor. John B. Wells was on as a Saturday night guy on Coast, but you know, I called him up, asked him to cover that story. It was one of the most shocking things that I've ever witnessed. Was, I mean, if you watch that video, you're gonna cry. Kelly Thomas, if tears aren't kind of coming out of your face and pulling on the you know, the desk that you're sitting at, I don't know, you might be a cyborg. Maybe that's a new Jeff Foxworthy skit. You might be a cyborg if, but it was that bad. And there is room in all of these situations where somebody can look at Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman and say, you know, the forensic data and what we have to go on, which isn't a complete picture. You know, it looks like Zimmerman thought somebody's up to something. He got jumped in the bushes. He fought him. He was pounding his head into the ground, and then he shot him in self-defense after he was, you know, walking around the neighborhood trying to see what was going on. Okay. You know, I can look at Ferguson and say, well, Mike Brown, he's on camera throwing this guy into the bag of the Doritos stand, and he allegedly robbed this place. And the reports say he was walking down the middle of the road, which is the weirdest thing you could imagine, like expressly looking for a fight. And then, the most reliable witnesses there says he put his head down and he charged, dang if he didn't run right at him like a football player or something, to paraphrase that quote. And I could say, it's like this kid, he brought this on himself. This wasn't just somebody skipping home from Sunday school, with a cake for his grandmother in his hand, and he just, I'm going to go shoot this guy. But that's the narrative that's drawn. That's the racial story that's told, and that's where things get into tunnel vision, where it becomes white versus black, whereas just, no, let's review the details of this case before we make an informed decision on what our point of view is on it. I've had a lot of in-depth conversations about Ferguson. Hell, Dan and I don't see eye to eye on this at all. But I think people that are searching for liberty, I think we need to be able to have these conversations. It's okay if we agree to disagree. We don't have to be jerks about it, and nobody has to be 100% on the same page as everybody else either. Like I didn't take sides in the Bundy Ranch thing. I saw the attack from the feds with the tasers and the guns and the pregnant woman and what was going on, and I learned more about it. It just seemed wrong, so I got their stories. It's just, I just think we need more safe places where we can have these tough conversations and let it rip, as opposed to just kind of sleeking back saying, I don't even want to get involved. I know I'm going to get attacked if I say something like that, so I'm not even going there. That's what we try to do here, Justin.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that I, for a long time on my Justin King Journalist Facebook page, my banner was actually just nothing but quotes from hate mail. I don't mind being attacked, because if somebody took the time to write me and call me a traitor, a leftist, a communist, a Nazi, whatever it is, that means they read it. I did my job. So don't be afraid of speaking out, even. And that's one of the things, because I do debunk so many conspiracy theories. I always try to include something that says, don't stop looking. Just because this one isn't real doesn't mean the next one isn't. You've got to be willing to take that. You've got to be willing to put yourself out there like that. You have a freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is designed to protect offensive speech. It's not designed to protect a weather report. Use it. If you don't use your right to free speech, you don't have it. So,
this is a. This is a month where something really funny happened to us. As I was mentioning, my brother, he saw a couple videos online, and then we saw him. It was going around maybe a year and a half ago, where people were lighting snow, and it was getting black, and it wasn't melting. And so my brother, he goes out, picks up a chunk of ice or a chunk of snow or whatever. He's like, all right, I'm doing this experiment. And he puts the flame to it. And, we're talking about chemtrails. We're talking about, all the pesticides and the Monsanto stuff. Oh, good news. PepsiCo, I believe, has decided to pull their aspartame out of all their diet products in their Diet Pepsi. I believe I have that story right. But, that just happened today, so I'm just wanted to clap on that one, because your dollars do make a difference, people. Think for half a second before you consume things, because you're funding the beast that you're also fighting. But I digress. But we've been covering all of the things with Fukushima, with chemtrails, and we're just trying to figure out how badly our planet's getting polluted. And so my brother does this video, he gives it to me, I'm like, all right, I'll put it up on the New American Media. So I title it, Will a Chemist Please Explain Why Flames Won't Melt Snow, or something like that. And so we put it up there, and I'll tell you, it's just the amount of conversation. Everybody is offering their either stupid opinion or their very expert opinion with specific explanations. And it turns out we got an email. I totally forgot about it for a while, from Discovery. Discovery Channel UK found the video, and they wanted to use it in a show. And we just ended up on, what the hell was the name of that show? Outrageous Acts of Science, and I think it was number 18, and they showed the video and then they explained the science behind it. But for me, that's a lot like what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to say like that HARP is mind control and it's all happening next week. Like I get that something's happening with HARP. I get that there are mind control programs. I get that the police state and all this stuff could be on the way, but it's like I'm not going to go so far as to make that brash judgment. We put something out there, we do our own test, and then we say, hey, can someone else explain this? And we want the conversation. And that's a big difference, is we're trying to get the right answers in conspiracy theories. I have no dog in the fight. I don't have any horse in the race. I don't care if it's true or not. I just want the factual details behind it. Is something happening at Homan Square? Did Michael Brown attack the police officer? What happened? It's like I'm just trying to get the data, just to get the facts. And then it's like if there is a conspiracy, if there is something to Bilderberg and the New World Order and the fact that Agenda 21 is we're losing our property rights and Department of Homeland Security is turning their sights on us, the citizens, and maybe the only thing stopping us is the fact that the military have 20 more years, like you said, to be here and protecting us accidentally. Is this true or is it not? We just got to figure it out. Any conspiracy theory could be true, but I think we got to be really careful to rushing toward judgment and declaring some of these things fact a little too soon. Do you find that a lot of people do that? They grasp a hold of something with some element of truth, and then they just run with it without knowing the difference?
Right. Well, and that's actually, I made a bet with someone that basically they couldn't present me with, one of these really out there conspiracy theories that I could debunk easily. And that's what led to this ISIS article. And that's also what led to me having to post a photo on Facebook of me wearing a tinfoil hat, because I couldn't. I couldn't debunk it. In fact, all evidence shows, we created ISIS through direct action, not by accident. And that was, because I do have a long string of showing, no, that is not what happened. This is what happened. This is, here are the documents, blah, 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 blah. This is what's going on. And then I got presented with that question, did we create ISIS? And what I expected to find was a mujahideen type creation. We armed and trained somebody that was going to fight our enemy, and then they, turned against us. That's what I expected to find. That is not what I found. The leader of ISIS was in U.S. prisons, and he was allowed to travel between prisons. We can't get exact dates on the times that he was in the prisons in Iraq. He was given liberties that no prisoner would ever be given under any normal set of circumstances. Then you have all of these mass defections after they get arms from us, and all of the commanders that defected had extensive ties to the CIA. I mean, it's not enough to say, yes, that's exactly what happened. We did this on purpose, but it's enough for me to say, if I had to put money on it, I would say that we did. And it looks like we actually created ISIS to keep the Iraqi government needing our help, and now it's gone out of control. That's what it seems like.
So why? So that Obama could end the war and then have new flare-ups so that he could stay in the war without breaking the campaign promise, but continue our, what did John McCain say, about 50 years being in Iraq, or 100 years? I forget what the quote was.
Money.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's almost always about money. And defense contractors were making a bundle. Defense contractors, have a lot of ties with this corporate government revolving door. And they set this up to keep a little baby enemy in Iraq, so we would have somebody to fight and keep funding the Iraqis and giving them stuff. And that was the, masters of the universe type plan that I believe they had. And, the problem with creating a terrorist group is that they're cellular, which means it doesn't matter that you have somebody in charge. They're not in charge. The guys, the brigade commanders and the cell commanders, they don't have to follow Baghdadi's orders. They're completely autonomous. So once you create a beast like that, what it does, you as the creator have no control over. And
it's Frankenstein, right? It's a Frankenstein theory.
Yeah. And I mean, looking at all of the evidence, there is nothing to suggest that this was an accidental creation. No, I mean, there's I mean, and I mean that literally. Nothing makes it appear that this simply sprung up because of a power vacuum that we created. It looks like we intentionally armed and trained these guys to go back to Iraq. And the most compelling piece of evidence is, you mentioned Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay, well, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Kurdish Workers' Party, the Taliban, these are organizations that, by all logic, should be allied with the Islamic State. But they know something we don't. All of these enemies of the U.S. are fighting the Islamic State. That is a piece of the puzzle that is very overlooked. When you have organizations like the Taliban or Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these different brigades, the Badr organization, they hate us. I mean, well, not all of them, but a lot of them hate the U.S. They certainly dislike the West intentionally. For them to ally with a puppet government that we created, that's not something anybody that understands the Middle East would expect to see happen.
Does Bo Bergdahl play a role in this?
That
story was so weird that he defected, but then we gave up 5 guys for 1. Who negotiates that way? That's the most backward thing I've ever heard. But do you think that has anything to do with that? Tell me, what? Because we're just spitballing here without saying equivocally we know what's going on. What the heck was Bo Bergdahl about?
I have a theory on this, and it's more of just a hunch based on what the CIA has done in the past in prisoner exchanges. We don't negotiate as policy, okay? We don't do prisoner exchanges. When we do it with an organization like this, there's probably a reason. And what I'm seeing is, during Cold War, if we flipped somebody, if the CIA or the FBI caught a KGB asset, and the KGB didn't know that we caught him, we would spend time working him, and then stage another arrest that the KGB finds out about, and then we'd exchange him back once we had him flipped to our side. So my gut instinct is one of two things. We let these guys go so they could assist with the creation of our pet in Iraq, or we let them go under the belief that they are actually on our side now, that we've flipped them. And again, that's a hunch. That I don't have any evidence to back this up. This is just based off of historical knowledge of what they do.
Now, that's all well and good, but then where would the Rose Garden butt-slapping fiesta and dinosaur media circle jerk over Obama the Great bringing home an American hero? I mean, it was like the good old shoe in Wag the Dog. You bring all this pomp and circumstance to bring home Woody Harrelson, but he's a really bad guy, and they actually had to kill him after he assaulted some lady out in a field. What was with the pomp and circumstance? Was that more to trick the other side that we felt Bergdahl was good, even though all of the people that served with him have testified and given interviews saying this guy intentionally deserted and gave this whole long backstory? Is that what that was about, just to trick him?
That's my belief, yeah. Is that it's a matter of, the bad guys, quote, get CNN too. So if they see us celebrating that we got this guy back, they're going to believe that they got a good deal.
That is the only thing that at least makes some sense.
And again, I don't really have any evidence, and that's one of those things that we won't have evidence about for 70 years until it's declassified. But that's it's one of those things that if I'm throwing darts at a wall, that's what I'm guessing at.
So then let me steer us back on and wrap this ISIS thing up, or maybe we could just transition, because you also did a piece about this this program that kind of flies underneath the radar. Is that connected in any way?
It's not connected to Bergdahl. That's actually more connected to Jade Helm, and it actually plays something in my feeling safe about Jade Helm. Yeah, basically, and the best part is, since this article ran, I've gotten emails and messages from Green Berets about it. Some are saying this is just completely untrue, and some are saying, well, you didn't include this.
Yeah, like you're getting there, but kid, you got a long way to go.
Yeah, you need to know that this is actually part of a larger army-wide organization, and I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. But basically, I'd heard this rumor. Now, first off, let me qualify so everybody that's listening is on the same page. The Special Forces, those are not Navy SEALs, they're not Rangers, they're not Marine Force Recon. Special Forces is a specific term designating Green Berets. Okay? So when you hear SF or Special Forces, that's what they're talking about. Now, I'd heard this legend about the Special Forces underground for a long time. So I started poking around about it. And basically, this is the legend, and I'll tell you what I think about it at the end, but that in the 1960s, early 1960s, 1961, Kennedy went to the Green Berets, their whole job is to train civilians how to fight. We touched on that earlier. And basically pulled some of their officers aside and said, look, if the U.S. military ever goes bad and goes against the U.S. people, I want you to promise me that you're going to side with the American people. And this promise has, according to the legend, been passed down through the decades to some of the guys that are wearing Green Berets today. And, it's a legend and all of this, and it's hard to track, and nobody believes it. I found these documents from the 1990s where, because one guy who happened to be a racist, and this was during the militia craze, he put out this newsletter. He started talking about it openly. DOD investigated it, and their determination was the coolest part, because what they determined was not that the organization didn't exist. They determined that it wasn't racist. And that in and of itself...
That poltergeist was not a Schittsburg Steeler fan. I can tell you, that poltergeist was not a Steeler fan. Is the headline to that, whether they're a Cleveland Browns fan or a Pittsburgh Steeler fan, or is the headline, poltergeist proven to exist beyond shadow, air quote, of a doubt, right? Like, that's the lead. Okay.
Exactly. DOD flat out says, yes, this exists. And the FBI ran an investigation, too, and said, yes, it exists. And they ran it, their investigation was that this particular group that's linked to a guy named Steve Berry was bad. That was, but they made the caveat that it was this particular group, which means there's more. Like, all of the investigations.
Not all poltergeists are bad people. Some of them are Cleveland Browns fans, but those are totally different entities, in air quotes. Those are totally different entities. So now he's also admitting, it's just this one group among this much larger collection of people that are in this Special Forces underground thing.
Right.
Wow, okay.
Right. And, so I dig into the relationship between Kennedy and the Special Forces, and I find the craziest stuff. I mean, just like, it's amazing.
Like what? Okay, what are we to Kennedy?
Kennedy gets assassinated, right? Within hours, okay, Jacqueline Kennedy, the First Lady, who has the FBI, the Secret Service, all of these people to lean on, okay, she contacts the Green Berets. She contacts them, and 46 of them are dispatched to Washington, D.C. immediately. 21 of them serve in the honor guard around the president's funeral, during his funeral, and, they do this. He's the only president to ever have this happen. Ever. Okay? The other 25, nobody knows what they did. No, nobody knows why they were there. Okay. From this point, the location where these promises were given to Kennedy was at Fort Bragg. Today, that's where Green Berets are trained. And they're trained at a place called the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare School and Center and School. Every year, Green Berets go to Arlington National Cemetery and lay a wreath on John F. Kennedy's grave, a little brief ceremony. Inside the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library, where the museum is, there's one permanent military display that does not directly relate to the president, and it's a Green Beret. It is possibly the coolest, strangest, creepiest, happiest little myth. But at this point, I don't believe it's myth. I don't know how pervasive it is. I don't know if it's, 10% of Green Berets or 90.
You know what we need to do, Justin? How about you and me talk to either Henry Rollins or who's it, Brad Meltzer? One of these history uncovered or undecoded, or some of the, like, this seems like a story I have. This one has not really been on my radar very much. Is this something that is very well known, or just very quietly in hushed tones talked about?
I don't know. I mean, it's well known in my circles, but most of my friends are ex-military. Most of them are ex-special operations, if not special forces. And that's the best part when you talk to special forces guys. They almost all said the same thing. It doesn't exist. But if it did exist, this is how it works. and I was like, holy, I mean, again, it's one of those little things that the denial is actually more revealing than if they had told the truth.
Have you ever seen that Simpsons episode where Lisa ends up at Area 51 and she goes to like a big map like they have in the mall, and it shows like the whole surrounding area, and it says, Area 51, you are here, we are not. And it has the dot right there.
Exactly.
I mean, you are here, but we are not, and it's written on the map. So what is it then that after JFK was killed, Jackie Kennedy called a meeting with the Green Berets and said, "I think the inside workings of this own government killed my husband. I need you to pledge that if the military-industrial complex were to turn its sights on the U.S. citizens, that you're going to revolt within the group and take them out from within." Is that roughly what I'm hearing, kind of putting this together, or am I off?
A little bit off. I think what we know is that Kennedy, and that's the other part, a lot of the legend is easily confirmed with Kennedy's travel records. The legend is that Kennedy went there, President Kennedy went there in October of 1961. Okay, that's the legend, and that's when he made these guys give these promises. So you go to the Kennedy Library and you look, and sure enough, October 16th or 19th, I can't remember now. Yep, there he was, and there's even photos of it. And guess who he's meeting with? A bunch of Green Berets.
Nice.
So I mean, it's all of the circumstances surrounding the legend are easily verifiable. The only thing that isn't is what was said in those private conversations. But the fact that the President of the United States went and met with these guys shows something, and the level of dedication that the Green Berets still show to Kennedy after 50 years. I mean, there's nobody in right now that was a part of that initial meeting.
Yeah, there's no way.
They still go lay the wreath on his grave. They still honor him to a degree that is not. So,
do you think that Kennedy knew he was a goner? Do you think he knew the writing on the wall, that it was very possible that something would be staged where he'd be hung out to dry and taken out? And so he kind of did this in advance, like he kind of had a premonition, or now this is all speculation, of course, unless some of these stories can shed more information on it, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that shows that Kennedy believed that he would, have a rendezvous with death. In fact, the little bit about his favorite poem being "I have a rendezvous with death," and in some 1990s movie. That's true. That was his favorite poem. And he was outspoken against organizations that definitely had it within their power to kill him. Now, I don't know, again, now we're getting into stuff that I can't prove. I don't know. But I do know that I believe that he set this brotherhood within the Special Forces up for the sole purpose. And you have to remember, at the time, there were coups going on everywhere. And I don't know if it was related to his belief that he was going to be killed, or he was just trying to establish something.
And that Cuban Missile Crisis was kind of a big deal right at the time, and Castro seizing power. And yes, it's very complicated, and the U.S. has admitted to playing key roles in a lot of these, overthrow and put in some, puppet dictator. Man, the more layers of this onion you peel back, Justin, the more stinky and tear-inducing it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is. At the same time, though, if you look at all of, and again, the crest gets adopted. The Special Forces crest gets adopted at the time. Most military units, their Latin logo is something like "always ready," or kill them all, let God sort them out. Special Forces, to free the oppressed. There's so much just, and it's all small stuff. But given the relationship with Kennedy, and given with the DoD's admission that this does exist, you have to believe that the legend is true. I have to believe it's true, and I want it to be true too. I have no problem admitting that, because if there was ever an ally the American people would need in the event of a dictatorship taking over, you couldn't pick a better group of guys. These guys are trained to turn that farmer in Wichita we were talking about into a soldier. That's their job. Right. And this happens to be the unit that this legend emerges from. It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I have this. I recently sent a couple of his old Zippo lighters in for repairs. By the way, that's a super cool thing. I don't have a sponsorship with them yet. But if you ever have a broken Zippo, you just mail it to Bradford, Pennsylvania, and they'll send it back fixed for you for free, and they'll fix the jangly latch in the lid, and they'll give you new stuff. But anyway, I'm holding one of the Zippos from a family member, and it's from the Signal Corps, and the motto here is Pro Patria Vigilance, watchful for the country, and this is the Signal Corps, and you just kind of think about it. It's pretty interesting. It says the United States Army Signal Corps develops, tests, provides, and manages communications and information systems support for the command and control of combined arms forces. Established in 1860, the brainchild of ... Important role from the American Civil War through to current day. It's very interesting because you just think about it, forever watchful for my country. And it's like when you have the opportunity to have this Zippo and just remind yourself, like when you're doing journalism, you're just trying to be watchful, and you see things that look interesting, or they look corrupt as hell, or dangerous. I don't know if you feel the same, but I've written for my high school newspaper, my college newspaper. I've done this site for 4 years, and I just I feel like I'm just trying to be watchful. Like if I saw a problem, I just want to warn people. I want to help people, and I'm just trying to connect dots. And sometimes when you get into some of this stuff, it gets a little frightening knowing that, this is life and death. Like, ISIS is no joke, however it was created. There is so much damage running rampant through the world right now just because it's not on our doorsteps. Doesn't mean it's not happening. And I just kind of feel like journalism is that, just forever being watchful and trying to get this information out there. I mean, do you know why you do what you do?
Oddly enough, the same reasons that I did the stuff I did in the 2000s, and it's cheesy, but the quote's there, I study politics and war, so my son can study philosophy and art. I do think that what we do can slow down the effects that the system we're currently in is going to impose on people eventually.
Was that a John Adams quote? I think I remember watching that on HBO.
It is.
Okay, good. It's a good one. It's a really good one.
And yeah, I mean that's why I do it. It's why I don't get any sleep. It's why I run myself ragged. And it's one of those things that I think that situations like this, like the ISIS thing, or like the Jade Helm thing, or like the SF Underground thing, because of my background, there are not a lot of people that make that switch. There's not a lot of people that go from being soldier of the empire, to joining the resistance.
Now I'm a starting point guard. Well, that's an odd career choice.
So I think that I've got a background that most people don't have. And I think that I can get further with stories just because I have experience in areas that have become headlines.
Which headlines do you think were the biggest ones that have the most connection that people can actually understand and make sense of?
I think the biggest one, as far as is something that you can show to somebody that isn't awake, and that they can really sink their teeth into, is because is the connections between the U.S. torture program and the beheadings in Iraq. That's one of those that, because the links are so concrete, and because everybody knows what they were told, we justified the torture program by saying, "Look, they're cutting people's heads off. We're just pouring water on them." Well, the reality of the situation is, prior to prisoners escaping Abu Ghraib and letting the insurgents know what was going on, we got our POWs back. Once that happened, that's when they started getting beheaded. That's that the timeline and what we were told and the order we were told things in is something that most people remember. And then to see what really happened, it plants that seed of we're not being told the truth. And that's all people really have to grasp to start looking for information on their own. So to me, that's been one of my biggest stories. It hasn't been as far as views, my biggest stories are, about police brutality or something like that, because that stuff sells. But as far as the most important things that I've written, I think that's definitely one of the most important, because it's so effective at showing people we justified this because of these beheadings. But in reality, these beheadings are because of the torture program. We started before that. And it's interesting because in the very first beheading video, we actually have a confession that that's what it's for. Because in that first beheading video, this is for the treatment of the prisoners at Abu Ghraib. They say it. It doesn't get translated on mainstream media. But they say it, right before they cut this guy's head off. And that, again, that omission, that's something that's important, because it shows people that they're being deliberately misled.
And there were people that said at the time, like, okay, we can be for both things here. We can be for ending these torture programs versus releasing the photos to fire up all of these people and make this disgrace even more public and inflammatory. There were a lot of people that were sitting on that side saying, okay, I agree with you, but I think this is going to have a blowback that's going to be really, really bad, and some people didn't care because, Bush is bad. It's like, fine, if you want to only look at things Republican-Democrat, that's the least of our problems.
And you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
In fact, most of our fighters, most of our soldiers that were killed or injured by foreign fighters. Those foreign fighters flocked to Iraq to defend Islam against what was happening in Abu Ghraib.
So you know what? So what's going on is this is Bundy Ranch. All these people from across the southwestern states, and I've talked to people from all around the country that spent multiple days getting out there to go be with them. That it was something so outrageous. The video that we saw online, that people said, "Hang on, we need to congregate here and see what's going on, and or." Defend these people, at least to get them into a court, not even siding with them technically on whatever law that is going on, just to calm this down so it doesn't turn into a firefight. You're saying that's what's going on in Iraq, is they're flooding there because it's like, well, our brothers are attacking Islam, and we got to defend this, and they're going to invade every country if we don't, and they're the bad guys, and it's like, man, I just want to watch football, you know.
And when you see
I don't want to do that.
Especially the photos that are about to come out. When you see them, it's hard. You cannot look at the soldiers in these photos and think that they're the good guys. And I think that's going to be really traumatic for Americans, is to see a guy in an American uniform doing stuff to people that we haven't seen since photos of Nazi Germany. And
since photos of what?
Since Nazi Germany. We haven't seen photos of soldiers doing this type of stuff to people in prisons.
So then let me pose the same question. Knowing what this is, should we release these photos?
That's
because that brings us full circle to kind of where we started. Now I'm thinking about it a little differently. Because it's like, yeah, journalism, man. You guys can't control the narrative. We're finding the story. Yay! You know, but there is some stuff that can be said for the Julian Assange or the Edward Snowden that just throws information out there and you don't know what's dangerous and what's not, and that some things could lead to really bad stuff unnecessarily. But what was the greater good there? Edward Snowden exposing that our government has completely abandoned our Fourth Amendment rights to privacy. I side with Snowden on that, and I regret any collateral damage along the way. But now, you know, it's like, all right, we already know Abu Ghraib's bad, but, you know, do we need these pictures out there? Is it going to cause another backlash, people flocking to the countries to, you know, get payback?
It is the one question at a time. Is it going to cause a backlash? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Is it worth releasing the photos because of that? There are a number of things that can happen here, because the Islamic State is doing the same thing to people. Now, people will definitely flock to Iraq to fight again. I definitely think that's going to happen. But what we don't know, and nobody can really predict, are they going to join the Islamic State, or are they going to join the Kurds and Hezbollah, and you have the people fighting against them? We don't know, and that's you know that's one of those things. Now, to be a selfish, nationalistic person for a moment, I think that the American people need to see them. Not having, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the horrors that occurred inside this place. It has to do with, I can't think of anything that is going to wake Americans up more than seeing this. We're talking about some really horrible stuff. And I think I think viewing that and having that plastered on, you know, the beginning or the front page of the New York Times, having these videos or these photos available on the internet, I think that it would help the American people more than it's going to bring justice to the victims. I mean, the victims in these cases, they're never going to see justice.
But let's be honest. If those victims never see justice, that's one thing. But current members serving are going to be in much more of a greater risk because of it.
Very true. It's fact. I mean, that's not, you know.
It's tricky, man. I had a listen. I had
a question because I've got family with that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's one of these things that an opportunity like this to show the civilian population in the United States what the government is capable of. And we have to keep in mind
They
that,
could do it
we'll
to us.
find out later that most of these guys weren't guilty.
Unreal.
So it's one of those things I think the American people need to see it. And yeah, we are going to become targets. Yes, it is causing backlash.
I had a surgery and repaired my knee, and went in for follow-up with my doc, and I just kind of said, hey, this incision for this couple of inches over this way, it's weird. It's like my skin, it's like tingly. It's almost like it's numb. Like I don't really have feeling here. And he took a look. He's like, you gotta crack a few eggs if you want to make an omelet. I'm like, screw you, man. That's a weird thing that's going to be with me forever, but, like, it is true. You can't get an omelet unless you crack the egg, and it's like it's not saying that anything is going to be a 100% perfect answer when you have to have a black or white. Either release the video or the photos or don't. That's a yes or a no. That's binary. That's 1 or 0. That's yes or no, black or white. So then if they are released, there will probably be some good that comes from it, and there will probably be some bad that comes from it. Just like if they held on to the videos or the photos like they've done for the past decade, some bad will come from that, and some good will happen because of that. I mean, some of these things are complicated. They are weird, and when it's like, well, it's also like they say with eggs, you can't unscramble eggs. Once you've dumped them all in there, they just become one mess, and I think that's where our geopolitical affiliations seem to be these days. You have no idea who your allies and enemies are, but I do find it really strange that you got to go to Russia Today and Vladimir Putin to kind of look at another perspective on things and reconsider who you've caught lying and what you've caught them lying about. And then I guess as we wrap this up here, when we combine all of these things and we take a look at all of the stuff that's happening, not just in one moment in time or one story, but you start piecing hundreds of stories together. How do you see this playing out globally? Because we're just talking about the problems inside of our own country. What do you see as the ultimate game plan? Why is this all happening? Why has it been going this way for decades? And kind of crystal ball. You kind of said, what did you say, 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
If it hit the fan, but do you think that there's a way we can avoid it too?
Why do I think it's happening? There are tons of theories about, hidden hands controlling everything. I personally don't believe anybody's that smart. I think that this is more a matter of money. I think it's rich people making deals with rich people, and that causing situations in which poor people get killed. And that's been what's been going on in the Western civilization for as long as anybody's recorded it.
No, but we don't need to go to Western civilization and even get into the atrocities and massacres of the Native American people. Let's go back to Europe. Let's go to China. Let's go to the roaming tribes, the nomads, the warrior monks. This has been happening on planet Earth, not in just Western society, but that's kind of the story of mankind. We get in groups and then we kill other groups, and it's just, unfortunately, a pattern we can't seem to find a way to stop breaking.
Yeah, and it's so horrible that people don't want to admit that it's just greed. And I think that's where a lot of these theories come from, is that you've got to have somebody to blame this on because it's so horrible. But I really do. I think it just boils down to money. Now, as far as is there any way that we can stop, a collapse and an insurrection? I think there is. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I think that we're on that path, and I think that's eventually all of the stuff that I'm saying about Jade Helm, don't worry, you'll see a 180. And
so what are you doing in the meantime? Let me ask you this. What are you doing in the meantime? How are you prepping yourself and your local community, and what steps are you taking without revealing too much operational security, and
we have a section on the fifth column called tradecraft. And what that is this is how you prepare yourself. And we're talking about everything from bug-out bags to, we're working on one now about how to choose a firearm, and these are things, if there's one thing that I would advise everybody to do, and it's tomorrow, go to your local Army surplus shop and buy a field manual on survival. Because most Americans today cannot survive without Walmart. And that's one of the things is, we've been insulated from insurrections and seeing the horrors of war anywhere other than YouTube and on our TV. But the horrors of war, the bullets are the least of it. Cholera, typhoid, starvation, dying of dehydration. These are things that are going to happen in the U.S. more so than in Iraq or any other war zone because the people there still know how to get fresh water. If you get outside of rural America, you get into a city, most of these people do not know how to survive without a grocery store. And that is going to be the biggest death toll. That's going to be the largest cause of death. It's not going to be combat. It's going to be simple failure to survive.
But not, let's say they have enough to get you through. It's going to become disease. It's going to quickly become disease of people that can't take care of just basic health concerns. And you don't even think about it. You just flush. Man, have you gone camping and had to dig a hole? Have you ever crapped in a composting toilet? You ever move into a hippie commune out in New Mexico for 6 months and build off-the-grid homes? Yeah, it's a little different. Have you ever gone camping for more than one night? Do you have everything ready in a bag if you got to grab it and go on no notice? If you're at home and the alarms go off and your power goes off because of an EMP when a nuclear blast detonated above your city, do you know how to duct tape your windows? Do you have your potassium iodide pills? Do you have a plan? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? And I'm not talking to you because I think you do have a plan of an idea of what I'm talking about. But I couldn't agree with you anymore. These are the things that people need to pay attention to. Do you know how to grow a garden? Do you have any damn food coming in? Do you have a survival straw? Anything, any basic components to just get through a couple of rough days? Like the power went out at my condo and it was out for, 20 hours or something? And I already had to go get ice to start packing all the cold stuff, and I had to reevaluate my system of buying food because, if the power's out for 3 days, do you have a little solar panel to charge your phone if there is a grid to connect to? I don't know. I think you're spot on with this. I think prepping goes hand in hand with being a patriot, my friend.
Yeah, I don't think, and you don't have to go, oddly enough, I'm actually in the room where all of my stuff is.
I was filming a bug-out bag video. Actually, I'm looking at Tradecraft, the bug-out bag. Let's see, free templates, oh no, that's an advertisement. Yep, what should be in your bag? And you got this nifty picture here. Let me see what I can, Jack Daniels right off the bat, because you're one of those dudes.
That's my bag.
Oh, geez, you got more. You got some more. I need more booze. Cigarettes, playing cards. But that's like the basic stuff. You got a little stove, you have a gas mask, a couple canisters, fire starter. Yeah, you got to be redundant with that. A multi-tool, some of those wipes. Yeah, just get a couple bags of those hand wipes. That'll get you through a couple of weird weeks. Anything past that, your system's gonna be different. You got a little backpack, and then so what are these? Wise food storage, it looks like, and flashlights and knives and a hatchet, and it all depends on your local area. Are you in a really hot place like Arizona or New Mexico or California? Then you need ways to get water, or if you're in a place that's cold, you need warm clothing. You got to prep for your own area. There is no right way to prep.
Right, and that's that's the thing is, and people worry about the cost, and the fact is, you can add $10 every time you go to the grocery store or to Walmart, and you can put this together over the course of a year, and you'll be done. I mean, I've got
matches, hand sanitizer, like little things, a little $2 LED light, right. A roll of duct tape. Like, these are things you just make a list and you cross one off and you cross another off, or, you raid that one weird cabinet where you pull out the drawer. You're like, seriously, what the hell's in here? You throw 5 Bic lighters in for redundancy. Oh, I got matches, I got Bic lighter. Oh, I got a pocket knife in here. That would be good in my bug up. And then you just upgrade your gear as you can. It's not complicated, really.
Yeah, it doesn't have to get expensive, and you don't have to go full on, turning a Connex in your backyard into a bunker. I mean, I've got 4 bags. I have a family of 4. I have 4 bags and then a large 50 caliber ammo can. And then other than, my vest and helmet and stuff like that, those 4 bags, we can survive indefinitely. It doesn't take a lot. Knowledge weighs nothing. That's why
it's the knowledge. You got to get camping. You got to get out and go camping.
The first thing you need to do is get that survival man and learn how to survive, because once you have that skill set, you need a lot less equipment. If you can supplement your rations with what you can find around you, you're going to survive a whole lot longer.
That's very true.
And a last ditch medical guide. And then as far as antibiotics, people worry about that. Well, I can't get antibiotics. I can't get this. You can't get antibiotics for people. You can go to a vet and buy antibiotics, and just so you know, it's the same stuff. Now, I'm not advising you do that. It's illegal. But I'm just saying it's the same stuff. You can get Cipro, you can get Moxilin, you can get all of this stuff. And you can buy it for fish. So, I mean, this cuts out the need to go to a pharmacist and get a prescription. Again, that's illegal. Don't do it. But if one was so inclined and they were going to take their fish with them when they bugged out, that's stuff you might want to have.
Yeah, I mean, do you have your documents on a little USB drive in a watertight container or something if you got to go now? Do you have your stuff in order? Are you buried in useless crap that you don't need? Or literally, if you had to go and you had 30 minutes to figure it out, do you have a game plan? Do you keep an extra thing of fuel in your vehicle? Do you have a siphon, which is illegal, but in case of a worst-case scenario, do you have a backup plan for fuel? It just comes down to thinking through scenarios and saying, all right, well, I hope I never need this, much like firearms. Okay, got a gun, and I hope I never need this. And if I ever do, I'm going to be as trained as possible, and hopefully the training will kick in and not the emotions of the moment. But I think you're onto something there, and I'll tell you what, Justin, if you're up for it, I feel like we should do a survival show. I don't know if you wanted to call it a tradecraft show or something, but I would love to kind of go through some highlights of things people need to be doing and techniques and tips and tricks, and you get kind of hooked watching these bug-out bag videos on YouTube, but a lot of it is knowledge, and a video isn't always necessary looking at cool gear to get that information out there.
Right. No, I'm more than willing to do that. I mean, I think that's actually doing that is, if people can't survive when it goes bad, warning people that it's going to go bad is pointless. So yeah, I would definitely be willing to do that.
Yeah, you reach a point, it's like, man, I've woken up as many people as I can around me, but now it's time. Like, it's go time. I got to do what I got to do. But what I got to do right now is I got to wrap this show up. So I know that we can point people over to your website over at thefifthcolumnnews.com. Where else can people stay in touch with you, Justin?
I'm on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. Every social media outlet, it's Justin King News / Justin King News. Definitely hit the Fifth Column. That is coming into its own now. It's not anti-media. We don't have quite that reach yet, but we're getting there. And I definitely think it's something that anybody that's listening to this show should definitely go find a social media outlet and follow, subscribe, like, whatever, and get those updates.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I guess you could always contact solutions-institute.org if you wanted to see if Justin might be able to advise you on a project that you're working on. So, hey, man, I got to go, but thank you so much for joining us on today's program. I think it went well. There's so much information here. I think it's astonishing. It's one of our better shows, and I appreciate your time. We will do this again.
All right, thank you. I'll see you later.
All right, you have a good weekend and a great week. I appreciate all you guys for listening out there. Check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. I appreciate you all. I love you, and peace.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Agree to Disagree with Brian Engelman, and this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the newamericanmedia.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. You know, there are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats. They know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.